Here's our timeline on this Wednesday afternoon. There's a change in Cleveland yet again. Deshaun Kaiser renamed the starting quarterback. He started the first 5 weeks of the season before he was benched in favor of Kevin Hogan in Week 6. Before noon here on the East Coast, the NFL Draft has a new home. The 3-day primetime event will be in Dallas, Texas at AT&T Stadium. And at 12:08, a tough blow for Washington. ESPN Redskins reporter John Keim says defensive tackle Jonathan Allen is out for the season due to a Liz Frank injury suffered in Sunday's win against the 49ers. Alongside Coach Herm Edwards and Damian Woody, I'm Wendy Nix. It is another day and another stop along the long and winding legal road for Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott. Elliott now granted another legal reprieve. This was last night in his fight to avoid serving a 6-game suspension over domestic violence allegations. A federal judge has granted a temporary restraining order blocking the league's suspension, and that does clear Elliott to play Sunday at San Francisco. Here's the head coach.
Yeah, for us, it's really been status quo, control what we can control, and that's been our approach all along. I think Zeke's done an excellent job of focusing on what he needs to do, and we've certainly tried to do that as a football team, so nothing's really changed from our perspective. Today he's here, and he'll have an opportunity to practice today, so there was no big address to the team. It's we just focus on what we can control as players and coaches, as a football team, and concentrate on that and have great days and stack good days on top of each other in our preparation for Sunday.
Stefano Fusaro joins us now from Dallas. Stefano, here we go again. What's been the reaction there?
Well, these past 2 days have really been a great example of what the Cowboys season has been like due to the uncertainty of that on-again, off-again suspension for Zeke Elliott. Just yesterday, he was banned from the building, not allowed to practice while he was on the NFL suspension list. But, of course, today he's reinstated, and he's back in the building practicing with his teammates as we speak. Now, we heard Jason Garrett just a few moments ago talk about just controlling what they can control. That was his response after getting several questions about were there private celebrations or, quote, high fives when the decision did come down yesterday at about 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Now, I did speak to some players, and some of them did express a little bit of frustration, just more along the lines of having to continue to speak about this situation. But they're all happy to have him here. Obviously, they understand that with Zeke in the backfield, it gives them the best chance to win.
Stefano, thank you. We turn now to Adam Schefter with what may be Elliott's next legal step. Adam, what's that look like?
Well, Wendy, we are in a situation now where essentially Ezekiel Elliott gets a reprieve for 14 days until October 30th. He will play this week at San Francisco. He will play next week at Washington. And then it will be up to the judge returning from vacation, the judge in the Southern District Court of New York, to make a ruling on whether or not she will rule on whether or not to grant the preliminary injunction. If she grants that preliminary injunction, obviously at that point in time, we find out his future. We find out whether he gets to continue to play for the rest of the season or whether he'll have to serve those 6 games at some point this year. But already we've seen 3 different judges say this is an issue of fundamental fairness. They have sided with Ezekiel Elliott in this particular case. I think people in the legal community believe it would not be a surprise if another judge ruled in his favor again. And so it's certainly possible that at this point in time, he's going to wind up playing this season. But we know he's going to be playing the next 2 weeks.
Adam, thank you. Adam will be with us throughout the afternoon with so much going on. And you heard what Jason Garrett said, guys. And clearly, I'm sure he's telling the truth. They can only do what they can do and prepare. But I think it's interesting that Stefano reported you're starting to hear a little rumblings of frustration from players because this is something that they have to answer for every single week, Coach.
It becomes a conversation that the media has, especially that's the question people will come in and ask the players. But I think the bigger question is this. If you're on the coaching staff, regardless of what's hovering over his head, you got to ask yourself this question. This is a talented young man. By all stretches of imagination, one of the best backs in the National Football League. He's their most dynamic player on offense. When he leaves the building every day, whether this was hovering over his head or not, he has a social life. How does he handle that? So you got to live with that, too. That's some of the problem. Now, we're talking about the issue. I understand what we're going with this. But every day when you have a player like this, he's shown you that he has a social life. And sometimes if he doesn't control that correctly, that can be a bothersome as well.
And this is a team that has had experience dealing with players who might need some additional coaching, so to speak, off the field with Des Bryant. They've had great success there. But, Damian, does this have any effect on this team right now in terms of he's playing, he's not playing, he's got the injunction, he doesn't? I mean, every day is a new development.
Well, it definitely makes it tougher because, you know, the one thing about if you were still suspended, you as an organization, as a team, you would treat it as an injury. Okay, we don't have this guy, so it's really the next man up. But when you have all this stuff, this flip-flopping going on as far as Ezekiel Elliott's case is concerned, it makes it tricky to prepare. Now now this week we have Ezekiel Elliott, so you got to give him the reps. Plus, guys in the locker room constantly have to talk about these things. Now, one thing that can help the whole situation is usually you set the tone from the top down. So, you know, with Jason Garrett, you need to set the message of what the guys need to talk to try to put this behind them, because ultimately you want the focus to be on your opponent and not on Ezekiel Elliott talking about this whole case.
And I think that's a valid point. We talk about the distraction. That's one thing. You can sort of work past that. But on the field, the division of reps and the division of getting the next person ready when you don't know, to me, in terms of a football perspective, Coach, that's a bigger issue.
Well, it is. And you think about this offense, they generally have about 64 plays a game. He touches the ball 25 times. So the whole offense runs through him. Now, with that being said, this offense all of a sudden is a little bit out of balance again. Last year, they were a team 46% of the time they ran the football. That is not the number going in thus far to their next game. It's 29 passes and only 16 runs. This team suffers in the third quarter. They've been outscored 37-7. So what does that happen? When that happens, what do? You start throwing the football. What does that do? It puts your defense on the field. And their defense is suffering through this. Remember, this was a team that controlled the game. 34 minutes of possession time. Now they're at 29 minutes of possession time. This is a problem for this team. They got to fix that.
And again, we do not know what's to come for Elliott. What we can say for sure, as you heard from Adam Schefter, he will play the next 2 weeks with this temporary injunction, and then we will see. NFL owners will wrap up their fall owners meetings today in New York City. The hot topic this week, of course, was the owners' dialogue with players regarding the league's policy on the national anthem. No changes were made to that policy, the policy that suggests but does not require players to stand for the national anthem. Sal Palantonio and Jim Trotter anchor our coverage from New York City. Sal?
Well, Wendy, yesterday it was all about the players and the owners talking, and today it was the time for the owners to react, Jim, to what the league presented to them. And within the meeting today, there was lots of discussion about what happens if a player decides to kneel. Can an owner punish the player? The game operations bylaw is saying the player should stand but not must stand. So what was the reaction some of the owners gave within the meeting when that came up?
Well, nothing has changed in terms of the game operation manual. What's interesting is I asked two owners, what happens if a team does discipline a player for taking a knee? And both of them said they don't know. That conversation did not come up. One told me there's concern that there's a gray area, that in all likelihood you would get a grievance or maybe even a lawsuit, and that's a road that they don't want to go down right now. But nothing was resolved in terms of that, so we'll have to see if any owner decides to take that action.
Within the course of the meeting today, we heard a lot of discussion sort of back channel about the pace of the discussions with the players on this subject. What are you hearing from some of the owners on that?
Well, today the owners talked a lot about communication in terms about how to get out a message that the demonstrations are not about disrespecting the flag or the anthem or the military. And some owners were upset that the league has been too slow in getting that message out. So look for them to work on PSA, public service announcement, at some point, stating what these demonstrations are actually about.
Yeah, they've been behind the sticks, so
Absolutely.
to speak, to use a football metaphor on this entire thing, and they need to get out in front of it, and I think a lot of owners want to do that. Now, we talked to a couple of players. I did. I know you have. And it looks like the league is looking for a list of priorities from the players, and the players are putting that together over the phone and perhaps meeting with the next 2 weeks. Things like social inequality, police brutality, a list where they can attach some action items that the league and the players can partner with. What are you hearing on that?
Well, I talked to Anquan Bolden this morning, and he told me they are going to meet with the owners again in 2 weeks. The owners wanted to meet Tuesday, but Bolden and Malcolm Jenkins are both doing what are called listen and learn tours. Bolden is doing one in Detroit. Malcolm Jenkins is doing one in Harrisburg, PA. And so they're not going to meet this coming Tuesday, but the following one. The players said they were really surprised at how receptive the owners were to their ideas. and they plan on working with him going forward. Bolden told me, I have never heard the owners talk so positively about the players. And as the owner said to them, this is not a player issue. It's not an owner issue. It's an America issue, and they want to help the players work to deal with it.
And it looks like the players are going to talk to individual teams and try to get this message out, right? So that there's a sort of quote-unquote gentleman's agreement that there won't be more demonstrations during the anthem going forward. I think that's the bottom line.
But there will be. Eric Reed has already said he's going to continue to take a knee. The question now is if players on other teams continue to do that, how are owners going to respond?
Right. In week 6, there were about 14 or 15 demonstrators out of 1,700 players. So, I think the NFL realizes if they handle it this way, they may have a chance to get out in front of the issue. And I think the players like that idea as well. For Jim Trotter, I'm Sal Powell. Back to you, Wendy Nix.
Sal, Jim, thank you. We continue to wait on the commissioner. He will have comments as well as they wrap up these owners' meetings in New York. We'll also have reaction on this late hit to Alex Smith.
I'm fresh out of cares.
I thought it was about as flagrant as it gets.
My teammates know who I am. I know what type of person I am. If you look at the play speaks for itself.
Bucks reporter, this a picture of Jameis Winston. He was in pads today and handing off. He did not throw, at least not during the portion of practice open to the media. After a day or two to consider things and also to watch the tape, Chiefs quarterback Alex Smith still believes this hit from Steelers safety Mike Mitchell in the third quarter of Sunday's game was a dirty one. The officials agreed. Here's Alex Smith.
It is a fast game, physical game, guys playing hard, trying hard. I think it's always hard to tell intent out there, so I'm certainly not going to try to deduct that from it. I felt like it was extremely late. I felt like there was nothing done there to avoid contact. It was really low from the backside. I thought it was about as flagrant as it gets when it comes to a load on the quarterback.
My view was what you guys saw. He got tripped by Chickalo, and it was unfortunate. But it's part of ball. He should have been penalized. There's strict liability there, and rightfully so. Player safety is big. But if you saw the play that you know there's no malintent or egregiousness there on his part, he got tripped. But Alex doesn't have eyes in the back of his head, and in game he doesn't know that. So it's reasonable for him to have the response that he had.
I'm fresh out of cares of what people that don't know me think about me. As long as I talk to Coach T about it, Kev about it, my parents obviously know, my teammates know. I wasn't trying to take Alex Smith's knees out. I went up to him and told him that. I was aware of the rule. If you watch the tape, I'm even trying to turn my body while I'm falling. Alex is backpedaling into me. I wasn't even going in the direction of Alex. He actually is throwing and fading away. There's a lot of things that go into the play that make it an accident that you don't want to see, but that's exactly what it is.
Well, these two teams have faced each other in 4 straight seasons last year in the playoffs. There's been some bad blood. I think in this case it's reasonable to assume that although the hit wasn't legal, Coach, perhaps it might not have been poor intentions. You don't know. But the officials did agree, and he was penalized.
He was penalized, rightly so. He is not a dirty player by any stretch of the imagination. And I think if you look at the play, you can debate it, and this is what it's all about. We debate things these days. His intentions were not to obviously maim or hurt Alex Smith. Was it a illegal hit? Yeah, went low. But there was a little bit involved in this. He's pushed. Alex is running. He's kind of falling forward. You can see when he throws his hands up like that, he really doesn't want to hit him. He knows he's going to get fouled. And he got fouled for it. So, the history of this young man, not a dirty guy. I can see where Alex Smith is mad. Should be. These guys can't beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Every time the Pittsburgh Steelers show up in their backyard, they beat them. So he's probably upset with that, too. So that's part of it.
Damien?
I think you got to look at somebody's background before we start claiming that somebody's dirty. You got to look at the tape, Coach. You got to look at their record, and clearly in his background, he's an aggressive player, but
which means there will be fines.
Right,
that will happen.
Exactly. But to say that is he a dirty player or anything like that, I think that's stretching it too far.
Well, yeah, and I think the argument is twofold: whether the play was illegal, and it was, and if there was an intention to hurt. And I don't think, and it doesn't sound like really anybody feels like that was the intention.
You don't want that attached to you.
No,
you never want that attached to you.
Man, maybe I'm naive, and Damian has played in the league for a long period of time, and he's a fantastic player. I don't think any player in the league, I would say 99% of the players, they never have intentions to end the guy's career.
Right.
That's not the intentions of a professional football player. Okay? And we use that word a lot. He's trying to hurt the guy. No. The players get it. This is a brotherhood. You don't want to be the guy that ends the guy's career on a bad hit.
Listen, we go toe-to-toe in between the white lines. I mean, for that 60 minutes, yeah, we want to get after each other. But at the end of the day, no player wants to see another player, get injured or get their career shortened because of some silly hit.
Or have that attached to their own game, I would think. We turn now back to Adam Schefter. Adam, do you anticipate any additional fines for Mitchell?
Yeah, I think the feeling around the league, Wendy, is that he's going to get fined. And if you look at the fine schedule for this year, the fine for roughing the passer the first time, and Mike Mitchell has no prior history to my knowledge, is $18,231. So I think there's a sense that he's going to be fined the $18,000+ at some point this week. He has not yet heard from the league on that particular matter. It would be his right to appeal that fine, and maybe his explanation could have the fine reduced by some amount. But I think at some point in the next 24 to 48 hours, Mike Mitchell will get an email or a FedEx envelope that says he's being fined in excess of $18,000 for hitting Alex Smith.
Adam Schefter, thank you. Mitchell has accrued nearly $32,000 in fines in his 4 years in Pittsburgh. But as you heard Damian say, he's an aggressive player, different from being a dirty player. You're looking live now at New York City. We are waiting on Commissioner Roger Goodell. He's expected to speak to the media in just about 5 minutes at the conclusion of the owners' meetings in New York. We'll be back.